trouble always came with the monsoon. Rain hammered the tin roof of the small wildlife center at the edge of the reserve, turning the red dirt yard into a slick of mud. Inside volunteers worked by lamplight, bottle-feeding a row of orphaned animals brought in by forest rangers. Most would not survive. When the door burst open, a ranger stepped through, soaked to the bone, carrying something wrapped in burlap. He laid the bundle on the floor. 2 tiger cubs blinked up at the light, their fur matted, bodies trembling. One let out a thin, broken cry. Their mother had been found dead beside a trap. The cubs were barely a month old. They needed warmth, milk, and luck. The center had no foster tigress, only a few rescued dogs kept around to guard and comfort the animals. Among them was Maya, a pale-coated Labrador with a calm, patient heart. She had raised litters of her own, and when the staff brought the tiger cubs near her bed to test their reaction, she sniffed them once, circled, and lay down. The cubs pressed against her belly and began to nurse. Maya licked their heads as if they were her own. From that night on, the volunteers stopped worrying about whether the cubs would live. They worried only about how they'd ever separate them from their new mother. Weeks turned into months. The cubs grew fast, bold stripes darkening, eyes bright. They learned to climb over everything: baskets, legs, the water bowls. Maya followed them patiently, cleaning their ears, nudging them away from trouble. When they slept, one would curl under her chin while the other sprawled across her paws. The smallest cub, a female they named Tara, followed Maya everywhere. She would trail behind her into the courtyard, pounce at her tail, then hide behind her when thunder rolled. Visitors came from nearby villages to see the strange family. They'd watch in silence as the golden dog and the striped cubs tumbled through the grass, sharing the same dish of milk. It looked impossible, but it worked. By the time the cubs were 6 months old, they weighed nearly as much as Maya. Their claws left deep grooves in the wooden door frames. The forest department decided it was time to move them to a larger enclosure deeper in the reserve, a halfway step toward the wild. On the morning of the transfer, Maya seemed to understand. She paced as the rangers loaded the cubs into crates. Tara pawed at the bars, yowling. Maya pressed her nose against the wood and whined softly. When the truck pulled away, she chased it halfway down the road before stopping, chest heaving, eyes fixed on the disappearing lights. She didn't eat that evening. For days, she slept by the gate. Tara thrived in the new enclosure. The rangers monitored her growth, teaching her to stalk, hunt, and fear humans again. Cameras caught her pouncing on hares, swimming across shallow rivers, testing her strength against tree trunks. She was fast and fierce, everything a tiger should be. But sometimes, at dusk, she would sit near the fence line and stare into the distance, the jungle quiet around her. The keepers noticed the behavior but didn't understand it. Only one of them, a woman named Kavita, remembered the bond between the cub and the dog back at the center. "She misses her mother," she said. The others laughed, but she left a scrap of Maya's old blanket near the fence anyway. Tara lay beside it that night and didn't move until morning. 2 years later, she was released into the reserve, collared, tracked, and healthy. The last image from the release video showed her walking into the trees, tail flicking once before vanishing. Back at the center, Maya had gone gray around the muzzle. Her walks were slower now, her eyes milky at the edges, but she still slept in the same corner of the kennel where the cubs had once curled beside her. When staff visited, she'd lift her head, tail thumping weakly, as if expecting small paws to tumble through the door. 5 years passed. A team from a wildlife documentary came to the reserve to film tiger behavior. One of their guides was the same ranger who had rescued the cubs years before. On a humid morning, they set up cameras near a watering hole where a large tigress had recently been spotted. Her collar tag read T17. They waited for hours. Then, just after noon, a flash of orange broke through the trees. The tigress stepped into the clearing, powerful, silent, magnificent. She crouched to drink, then looked up sharply at a sound from behind the camera crew. A bark. Everyone froze. A volunteer from the old center had brought Maya along for the trip, more for companionship than anything. The old dog had wandered out of the jeep, tail wagging uncertainly, nose lifted to the wind. The tigress stiffened, ears forward. The camera crew whispered to stay back, but the dog kept moving, one slow step at a time, her paws sinking into the mud. The tigress let out a low rumble, not a growl, something softer. The kind of sound a tiger makes when greeting a cub. The air seemed to stop. Maya took another step, then another, until only a few meters separated them. She sat down, tail brushing the dirt. The tigress lowered her head. Their eyes met, brown and amber, old and young. Kavita lifted her camera. No one spoke. The tigress moved forward, each movement deliberate, until her massive head was level with the old dog's. Then she did something no one expected. She bent down and pressed her nose to Maya's muzzle. The sound she made was almost a purr. Maya leaned in, eyes half closed, tail moving once, slow. The tigress's breath stirred the fur on her neck. For a moment they stayed like that, motionless, a mother and daughter recognizing each other across years of wildness. Then from the treeline a smaller tiger appeared, younger, barely a year old. It stepped hesitantly into the clearing, curious watching. The tigress turned her head, gave a soft chuff, and the young one padded closer until it stood beside her. Maya sniffed the air and whined. The cub blinked, then reached forward and touched its nose to hers. The camera finally clicked, that single image, the aging Labrador surrounded by the tigers she'd once raised. Her lineage echoed before her, spread across the world within days. People called it a miracle. But to those who had known her, it felt simpler than that. It was gratitude returning home. After that day, the tigress disappeared back into the forest, her cub following close behind. The film crew left, the roads dried, the season changed. Maya lived another year. On her final morning, she lay in the shade outside the center, eyes turned toward the distant hills. A faint sound drifted through the valley, a deep, rolling call that echoed across the trees. The volunteers swore it was a tiger. Maya's tail moved once. Then she closed her eyes. At the edge of the reserve, where the forest meets the old road, there's a weathered sign marking the release site of T-17. Beside it, someone placed a small brass plate engraved with two words: Maya's family.